holy and whole, broken, needing the one, open, body and soul, healer come. Vessels holy and whole, broken, needing the one, open, body and soul, healer come. Vessels holy and whole, broken, needing the one, open, body and soul, healer come.
A gospel lesson from Matthew chapter 8, verses 18 to 27. Now, when Jesus saw great crowds around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. A scribe then approached and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Another of his disciples said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." And when he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. A windstorm arose on the sea so great that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but he was asleep. And they went and woke him up, saying, "Lord, save us, we are perishing." And he said to them, "Why are you afraid, you of little faith?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was dead calm. They were amazed, saying, "What sort of man is this? Not even the winds and the sea obey him." This week we turn this is taken from Walter Wilson's book, Healing in the Gospel of Matthew. This week we turn our attention to the cosmos, to our place within the whole of creation. This week we are reminded of the magnificence and raw power of the reign of God. The God who heals through a gentle touch is also a God who rebukes wind and waves. Wilson writes, the protagonist of the first gospel is not just some charismatic healer the evangelist is showing us, but a divine warrior, an agent of eschatological deliverance, with his power extending not just over disease and disability, but even over creation itself. Accordingly, every act of Jesus needs to be interpreted within a mythic framework. Every healing representing a moment in a cosmic drama of conflict and transformation. The story also reminds us that the work of following Jesus is costly. To follow Jesus, we must cross over lands and seas. We must leave behind what we know in order to do a new thing. It might be hard, it might be terrifying, but it is our calling, and we know Jesus is with us. We can move in new directions. We have a lot of brokenness in our lives that calls for healing, renewal, and restoration. Perhaps nothing more immediate and more important than the healing, renewal, and restoration of our natural resources. Environmental health impacts more than we could only imagine. If we work towards recovery of ourselves and our communities, but fail to work towards the recovery of our environment, we will find ourselves caught up in constant cycles of destruction. The healing of all creation is intertwined, interdependent. We have not always cared for creation the way we ought. How are we going to turn the ship around? What new things can we do? How can we follow the way of Jesus when it comes to environmental health? How can we create something beautiful that will last for generations to come? Let us indeed be part of that positive tipping point.
She's not here tonight. She's
This is a poem, a prayer that I got in a text message from a dear family friend. And she said, I thought you would enjoy this. The friend is somebody I know from Massachusetts, but spent a bit of time living up near Sugarloaf. And it turns out that the author of this poem lives in Nahant, and I lives in the town in Massachusetts where I have some family, and I'd never met her before, but this just seemed to speak what we are in the midst of. So it's Lenten Snow, and the author or the poet is Polly Bradley. Like soft white crystals descending in windless silence, viewed through kaleidoscope of stained glass window, the Holy Spirit surrounds the prayerful penitents, veiling their blackest ash with forgiving snow, melting away the Spirit's subtle control, turns into living water, dream or vision. The sun-warmed soil of the quiet, waiting soul, flowers with peace, thanksgiving, adoration, snowdrops looking humbly downward, lost in wonder, crocuses raise upward to beseech, daffodils gaze firmly outward to neighbor, blossoms of spirit, each speaking its own speech. Earth blossoms with springtime, hope and restoration. The soul with Easter, hope and resurrection. As we come together as a time of prayer, I invite you to share your joys and concerns, your sorrows and your triumphs.
I don't know how many of you caught the news article in the Sun Journal about a motorcycle accident on 95 involving Patrick Daggett and a woman. Patrick Daggett owns Daggett's Garage on the Wilton Road. And it's the garage I've been going to for years and years. It was Doug Freeman's, and then Patrick Daggett bought it. And I guess that both he and his writer are in very, very serious shape. Interestingly enough, our postal worker who delivers our mail is a cousin. So I'm hoping to find out more information at the next delivery. But anyhow, I'm certainly holding him and his passenger in prayer at this time.
This is our prayer.
This is our prayer.
I'd like to pray for all the victims, the families, and the friends of the most recent mass shootings that we've seemed to not be able to get away from in this country. And my prayer too is that someday, somehow, we'll find a way to resolve our differences without violence. This is my prayer.
This is our
prayer.
prayer.
In connection with that, I've been experiencing a pile of anger at the traditional reaction to these killings that come out of our Congress, mostly the Senate. And I'm going to need a lot of, I don't know what the mixture to counter anger is, or to transform it into something that looks more like following Jesus. I suspect I'm not the only one too. For all of us who are struggling in this regard, I guess my prayer is for all of us. This is my prayer.
This
This
is
is
our
our
prayer.
prayer.
Well, Dick, I would reply to that righteous anger is okay. Like John Lewis said, you gotta get angry, and then you begin to do stuff about that.
Yeah.
Take action in a positive way.
Make good trouble.
Good
Yeah.
trouble. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the one.
I seem to have a lot of prayer. I've been having a lot of prayers here, but I have a great prayer of thanksgiving for the neighborhood in which Shirley and I live. We took a walk a day. We tried to take a walk around our neighborhood today, and kept stopping to talk to this person and that person. And a walk that should have taken maybe 34, 35 minutes took something almost an hour with all the conversations. But so I'm grateful for all the folks in this neighborhood. Nothing against those of you who are not, but I'm very grateful for this neighborhood and its life. This is also my prayer.
This is our prayer.
This is our prayer.
Our prayer.
I have a prayer of thanksgiving that all my siblings have finally gotten their first vaccinations,
Hey,
Amen.
and some of us twice. So
great. This is our prayer.
This is our
Our prayer.
I want to lift up a prayer for all kinds of amazing long-term care workers. I had a great joy this morning. I met my mom for an appointment at the hospital, and she was escorted in by this young lady. And as we talked briefly, I asked her, I said, "What is your last name?" And so she told me, and I said, "Is your mother's name Sharon?" And she said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "And would your grandmother have been Gloria?" And she said, "Well, yes." And I said, long story real short, Gloria was somebody who was served by Work First, but very independent and just a great lady. But I used to give Gloria rides several times a month.
Mm.
And often on these rides, we would go to stores and buy cards for her granddaughter, Sharon.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I'm sorry, Summer. Sharon's her mom. And so I said, I've known you before I knew you. I knew your grandmother. She was one of my favorite people. She used to tell off all kinds of folks and very stubborn and independent. And her mom, I helped to hire her at LEAP. And I said, so what a beautiful thing this is to see life come full circle, and you're being such a great support to my mom. So wicked cool stuff. And she was beaming and I was beaming, and circle of caring and goodness and karma comes through once again. But I'm so thankful for so many great long-term care workers who've done so much this past year
Yes.
through impossible times.
Uh-huh. This is our
This is
prayer.
my prayer.
This is our prayer, yeah.
I just have a prayer for the relief of things opening up, of shots being given and being able to go out and see people. We spent 3 or 4 days with my daughter from Southern Maine. She hadn't had her shots yet, but the rest of us both had 2 shots, and that's allowed for her to come visit. And we had a wonderful time. Stan and I went to Augusta today to stimulate the economy, which we did.
Yes.
And I was pleased to see that I saw one person at Target that didn't have a mask on. Everybody else, and we went in a lot of different places, but people are still obeying the rules, and they're not just throwing caution to the wind. Now, maybe it's because it was Augusta, I don't know, but I was pleased to see that every place we went, people were masked and relatively distancing and all that. And so I'm happy we actually ate in a restaurant and they were doing all the right stuff, and distancing and barriers between the tables and all that business. And it was wonderful to be out. It's just such a wonderful feeling just to be able to go live a little again. And but to see that people, at least today, from what we saw, are still taking this seriously until everybody gets their shots and we get a firm go ahead or whatever. I don't know. But so I'm grateful for that. Just grateful for the vaccines, for the way life is beginning to blossom. And this is a wonderful time for it to be blossoming. It's the right time for life to be coming back into things again. So this is my prayer.
This is our prayer.
This is our prayer.
So along with that, and I think, Donna, it's because of what you just said, a prayer for the church tomorrow. We are going to have our probably our very first in-person bigger meeting since this all started. We are doing an experiment and are going to do exec in person tomorrow, in the vestry, spaced out with the big long tables, and as an experiment. Masks, yeah, everybody has to be masked, as an experiment to see what we know that it's not going to be a smooth transition from total Zoom meetings to in-person meetings. And we may have people who are still joining us through Zoom. So how do you figure out that tech, and how do you figure out a few things? So prayers for the experiment tomorrow. And yes, prayers for the experiment tomorrow.
This is
This is
our
our
prayer.
Prayer.
So why don't we join our hearts and minds in the spirit of prayer? Holy and beloved God, thank you for working in us and through us, through the ways that you lift us up and encourage us, the signs of spring in the air, even when it's gotten a little colder again, the snow melting, even if it's not all gone yet, and know that there's still possibility of more snow to come, but oh, we see hope. We lift up these prayers that have been offered today. We ask for your comfort, your guidance, your thanksgiving, your presence in our lives, which is there already. But continue to ask you to be with us, guide us, inspire us, move us, and comfort us. And holy God, we ask all of these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
In your love, make us whole. May we rest in your compassion, calm the lost, weary soul. In the warmth of your love, may your peace fill our hearts. May we know the love of Jesus. By your grace you console. Make us holy. Make us whole.
So I wish you all great blessings as you go out into a night that is still light out. It is still light out. And blessings as spring continues to spring, and that each of you may be blessed by the light and the newness. Thank you.
You.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Lorraine.